All praises due to the Most High family. We back with another Acres anime review. And I just finished watching the first episode of The Water Magician. And this was a fun and adventurous first episode. So it's an isekai. It's an isekai anime. We didn't really get the backstory of what happened to RYO before he entered the isekai. But basically, he talked to a self-described angel, and RYO decides to refer to this angel as Michael, as you know, like this is an angel reference. And so this angel explains, like, okay, RYO wished to live the slow life. So Michael was like, okay, well, you have an affinity for water, and we'll put you in a cabin, and this cabin will have a barrier protecting you from wild animals and monsters, and we'll give you 2 months of food, right? And so this gives RYO the opportunity to learn his magic powers and how they work, and to associate himself and familiarize himself with the layout of the land and explore and adventure a little bit. Not too much, but just enough to be exposed to a few things in this first episode. Like, in a good way. This first episode seemed like a longer than normal first episode in a good way. Okay, so we got RYO, and he got his cabin out in the country. And so his first steps onto his endeavor is learning, like, how does his magic work? How can he manipulate hot and cold water? For real, is like the first steps of his adventure. And so really, he, like, at first he really trying to learn, like, okay, well, how can I draw myself a hot bath with my magic? And so his first step was to really create like a magnifying glass out of ice, and to use that magnifying glass to start a flame, and then make the water hot so he can draw himself a bath, right? And so all this episode, like, he was really doing a lot of ice magic. I don't know if that's the easiest way to use water magic, or if that's just where his mental went at first. But so the show's called The Water Magician. He was doing a lot of ice magic, right? But so he used a magnifying glass out of ice, start him a fire, warm up some water. He did end up learning the reverse of that. And so he did draw himself a bath with just producing hot water instead of doing the roundabout way. But so he outside practicing spells. You know, he trying to shoot like a water jet from his hand. He trying to produce icicles that he can shoot. He shot water balls, right? So he's just out there practicing. He asked, who he's calling Michael, he said, hey, I want the slow life. And so he's definitely enjoying and partaking in the slow life. You know, there's books that was in his cabin, and so he reading up on the monsters that are around and the monsters that he might run into. And so, boom. So that's the setup. Now, the first encounter we have is with a lesser boar. And his practice came in handy because he was able to basically make like a ice runway, so the board charging him slipped, and then at the end of that ice runway he made a bunch of like ice spears, a bunch of like sharp icicles, so the boar slipped on the ice runway and basically ended itself, like basically was the cause of its own end because it got too aggressive and a little overzealous. Next thing we run into is like an assassin hawk is what we called it. And we ran into this thing twice. So first time, he creating like ice walls and defenses because he knows this hawk can use magic and it's a danger physically, like it's just fast and has talons on top of, in addition to having magic. So he's running away, he's trying to defend himself. But so we know that we run into this thing again because it has a scar on its eye, and later on in the episode it evolves, it matures, it changes into something different, which is a test of our mettle later in the episode. But really the two more important encounters that we have in this episode are, I believe it was after the assassin hawk. We seen while just exploring the land around our cabin, Loki, and he said he was lost. The assassin hawk chased us around and we dealing with that, and we Loki got a little lost from our path and didn't really know exactly where we was at in relation to our cabin. Now, in that circumstance, we come upon like a lake or a pond, and there's like is it the Fairy King? We don't know. Somebody made reference to this later in the episode, but it's like a headless suit of armor that we come across. And eventually we have like a training session with this headless suit of armor. And they really show us, they gift us like a sword and show us how we can like make this sword into like a ice sword, right? It's really like a short sword, but they showed us, hey, you can use your ice magic and make this into a more traditional sword, like a more powerful weapon, it seems, is what they showing us. But we practicing, we sparring with this headless suit of armor. Now later, the evolved assassin hawk comes back, and it's changed into something else, but we recognize it because it has the same scar on its eye, and we dealing with that. And RYO really says, he's like, okay, wow, I appreciate you, because although I have to like end your life as a wild animal, as a magic beast, he's like, you've afforded me the opportunity to grow. You've given me a challenge. You've given me something to overcome in your evolved state. And so I appreciate that, RYO is expressing as he's defeating this evolved assassin hawk. And he's using the weapon that the Fairy King, or this headless suit of armor, gave him. Now, after that, family, a whole dragon shows up. And he makes mention of the evolved assassin hawk. So we don't know the connection there exactly. But the dragon showed up, and this is something that RYO had read about in the books. And so it was a nice slow-paced introduction. We seen him testing out his powers. We seen him grow. But we really don't know where the story is going. But this is a story in my queue, and I'm glad I finally was able to get to it. I'm excited to see where the story goes from here. But that was the Water Magician episode 1. Peace and love.